come and recently gone, I will call to order the meeting of the Marathon County Board of Supervisors. For the purposes of this meeting, I will be acting as chair until the point in the agenda when the chair is elected. The first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. After we say the Pledge of Allegiance, please remain standing for a moment of silent reflection. And following that, if the supervisors would remain standing and be sworn in. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, if supervisors would remain standing and everyone else may be seated. Supervisors, if you would raise your right hand and then repeat after me. And when I say state your name, state your actual name. Don't say state your name. I state your name, who have been duly elected to the office of Marathon County Board Supervisor. But have not yet entered the duties thereof. Swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States. And the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin. And will faithfully discharge the duties of said office. To the best of my ability. And if you choose, so help me God. Thank you. I will have this start around. This is the oath. If you will look for your name and sign your name next to your box where your name is, I would appreciate it. We'll start up here with Supervisor Rosenberg and make its way around the room. You all may be seated. Thank you. The organizational meeting of the Marathon County Board of Supervisors, composed of 38 members, will convene at the Marathon County Courthouse Assembly Room, 500 Forest Street, Wausau, on Tuesday, April 21st, 2026 at 6 p.m. And the agenda was properly signed and posted. I would ask that everyone please silence your cell phones or other electronic devices so as not to interrupt the meeting. And we'll proceed to roll call, and I would request that all the supervisors please sign in. Yep. Okay, he's here. That's a great way to start the first meeting, isn't it? Just bear with us just a minute.
Yeah.
Gotta move it. Oh, hit the green roll call button. Okay, now try to sign in again if you would, please. It may take a minute for it to pop back up, but we can mark everybody present at least. Draybeck's excused, he's not here. He's excused. Raybert, Hagan, and Evan are here. Dickinson's excused. All right. Hit tally. All right, we have 35 supervisors present, so we do have a quorum and can conduct business tonight. Supervisor Dickinson is excused. Supervisors Draybeck and Opel will be participating remotely, and they have already taken and signed their oath of office. I want to thank all the visitors attending the meeting here in person or watching via public access or YouTube. We appreciate your interest in county government. The next item on the agenda is the adoption of the rules that will govern this county board term. So I would like to recognize Administrator Leonard for a brief presentation.
So it'll be a presentation, and I don't know that it'll be brief. So the chair of the Rules Review Committee from last term, Supervisor Dickinson, couldn't be here today and asked me to go over the rules that are in your packet for your consideration today. I want to recognize, again, Rules Review Committee Chair Dickinson and all the other members of that committee. That was Supervisors Robinson, Mask, Hart, and Poole for what I think, as we go through this, will become evident was a great deal of work that the individual supervisors and the committee as a whole put in. So I will try to go relatively quickly through the document itself. I'm going to work on starting on page 67, which is where the red line version of the rules is set forth, really just to highlight some of the changes for those returning supervisors that are from last term. I should start with one Scrivener's correction that we need to make, and that is in Rule 10 on page 73. Thank you, Supervisor Foote, for catching the one error we intentionally put in the packet. It still referenced 7 p.m., which for the meeting time for the county board, because at your last organizational meeting, that's when you changed to 6. So with that, thank you again for that correction, but I'll go relatively quickly through these. I'm trying to separate out what are some Scrivener's edits, some clarifying items, correcting some items that to make them consistent with Wisconsin statute, and then I'll highlight a couple of what I'll term substantive changes. On page 140 of the packet, there is a summary document relative to appointment authority, and there also is in your packet a summary, a 2-page summary that Rules Review Committee Chair Dickinson put together, just outlining each of the changes. But we'll start on page 67. Those changes really just allow the chairperson, if there's a need to hold the meeting on a different day, to do that in accordance with law. Similarly, on page 68, the change allows for a special meeting of the county board to be called, again, consistent with Wisconsin statute, section 5911, to allow members of the board to do that as a collective. Moving then to page 70, really this is a clarification of what it means to make a motion to table, because there was a lack of clarity on that. Similarly, with respect to Rule 4, to be consistent with Robert's rules and the recommendations from Wisconsin Counties Association, as we're doing today, because you don't have a chair in the position, we haven't conducted elections, so at the organizational meeting or any other meeting, as you'll see later, where the chair and vice chair are not present, it does provide authorization for designated staff to call that meeting to order for purposes of designating then during the meeting a chairperson to run the meeting. Moving then to Rule 5, this is a change. Rule 5C is to again make the recommendation consistent with the recommendation of the Wisconsin Counties Association in its model rules document. It's also consistent with Roberts. What that reads is relative to the election of officers, in this case, chair and vice chair, moving away from what your previous rule was, which was a primary system essentially, to a system where if multiple ballots are required and there are multiple people running for a particular officer position, that you do not reduce, you don't kick off the lowest vote getter. And the reason, the rationale that Wisconsin Counties Association and provided for in Roberts is that it allows for the potential for a consensus candidate in the event of deadlock. So again, pursuing consistent language with Roberts and Wisconsin Counties Association. Rule 6 on page 71, this is additional language that was prompted by a court case, I want to say about a year ago perhaps, relative to closed session in the state of Wisconsin, clarifying how that process should go and the fact that there should be some discussion on whether or not closed session is necessary before you vote on going into closed session. Page 72, it changes in the event of a vacancy, changes the staff support for that interview process for the board from being the county administrator to the county clerk. selfishly, this was a request that I had because it puts me in an awkward spot because I work for you, not the other way around, and picking your bosses generally, I don't think is best practice. So Kim, as an elected official, would be able to do that, to assist you in the interview process. Moving to Rule 9, clarifying the need for, in the event of a cancellation of your educational meeting, it clarifies that public comment would be afforded then on the voting meeting of the board. Because there have been a number of occasions this term, this previous term, I should say, where you did only hold one meeting a month. Here on page 75, clarifying that the announcements portion of your agenda can be used by a supervisor to individually recognize staff or citizen members. Similar language is included with respect to each of your subordinate bodies as well. Turning to page 77, this is a significant insertion into the rules document, clarifying what it means to abstain and how abstention can be effectively determined by the board chairperson and a committee chairperson. One of the reasons prompting this, the discussion at the Rules Review Committee, was that particularly in occasions where an individual is attending virtually, and for whatever reason during the course of the meeting, the connection perhaps is bad or they drop off. If that is the case, the board chairperson or the standing committee chairperson would have the clarification through this rule to make a finding that that individual has abstained. Moving to Rule 13, this is, I would say, one of the substantive, perhaps the most substantive change in process in your rules that was discussed by the Rules Review Committee. And that is that where permitted by law through the appointment process to committees, boards, and commissions, it calls on the appointing authority to not only make appointments subject to confirmation by this body for all of the members, but also through that process to designate a chairperson and a vice chairperson. Again, those are subject to confirmation by the board. The rationale, this is my perspective of the rationale that ultimately the Rules Review Committee adopted, was to strengthen the tie between elected officials, because the requirement is that those chairpersons and vice chairpersons, where noted in your rules, shall be county board members. It strengthens that tie of those subordinate bodies back to this body. Rule 15, again, simply a clarification that you have your individual committee chairpersons have the authority to reschedule a meeting if they have to cancel one. Excuse me. The bottom of page 81, again, clarifying the utilization of the announcements section of the agenda, as well as providing for the ability for individual standing committees to issue a proclamation on behalf of that individual standing committee, recognizing an individual citizen organization that's made a laudable and recognizable contribution to an area of jurisdiction underneath that standing committee. Rule 16 on page 82. This again allows for standing committee chairs and subordinate body chairpersons in the event they need to reschedule a meeting. They are authorized to do that, provided that it's done consistent with Wisconsin law, both open meetings and the notice requirements. Similar language that I already referenced relative to closed session. And it mirrors on page 83, sub 14, mirrors the authority of the chairperson of a subordinate body to cancel a meeting, really just clarifying what has been long-standing practice in the event of lack of quorum, inclement weather, other emergency or unforeseen circumstance, or the lack of agenda items. This rule on page 84 is one of the special rules you've adopted previously. It allows for, in the need of an immediate response from the county board or a standing committee on an issue of concern where a full meeting of the board can't be held promptly or a standing committee meeting can't be held promptly. It allows for the board chair and vice chair, as well as the standing committee chair of jurisdiction to call for a meeting consistent with your rules to then recommend action. An example would be when metallic mining was being debated at the state and some changes to the metallic mining rules that the county needed to weigh in a very short time frame. So I should say that rule just clarified, it added additional clarification relative to the circumstances that would allow for the triggering of that rule. Rule 18, relative to the guidelines and expectations for county board members. I'll address this change. It's really copied language from also rule, it's consistent with what is in Rule 21, so I'll take that up a bit later. Conflicts of interest, just clarifying that the clerk's office is responsible for circulating the conflict of interest form that each of you will need to fill out, and then they maintain that. Clarifying on page 87 that the job description for supervisors that is used to solicit interest in the event that the board does have a vacancy during the term, that is reviewed by the Rules Review Committee biannually, consistent with the formation of that body. Rule 19 relates to, it goes from page 87 on to page 88, just clarifying the process through which your salary setting is done, and really using more general language to ensure that we don't need to make annual changes to this, this rules document. Rule 20, relative to expenses for reimbursements and travel for county board. The discussion at Rules Review was to streamline that process and expand access to educational programs. So it looks like a great deal of red lines, particularly when you get on to page 89, but it does essentially streamline that process and allow for more board members to attend, particularly the Wisconsin Counties Association annual and legislative conferences. So that brings me then to Rule 21, which I referenced before is carryover from Rule 18, the same language is there. I'll give you my perspective. This was discussed at Rules Review, but from my perspective, it clarifies what has been the longstanding operational approach that the board has taken relative to the relationship between the county administrator, the board, and then the board also with department heads. The language itself is copied word for word from the Wisconsin Counties Association model rules, essentially clarifying that the board's role is one of policy making and serving as the legislative body. And again, all the red line language is pulled directly from that model rule. It doesn't, from again, my perspective, change operationally. You will still have contact with department heads. It just clarifies the process for that. So within a committee structure, if you have a request for information or a report from a department head, you make that during your standing committee or subordinate body meeting. If you have a request for information or a report outside of one of those meetings, you'd reach out to me, and again, a number of you, I frequently get those requests. And if I'm able to answer the information, provide the information, I'll do that. If not, I do reach out to the department heads that are needed to procure that information, whether that is something that I can reach back out to you and give you the information, or I would say equally likely, I'll put that department head in contact with you to provide that information. Really just clarifies that the process, again, consistent with the Wisconsin Counties Association model rule. I would say as a practical matter, one piece of clarification. For those of you that are on boards that have independent authority over a department head, so examples would be the Marathon County Public Library, the ADRC of Central Wisconsin, or the Central Wisconsin Airport. Those bodies effectively serve as the administrator. That's how those are set up, because they're multi-municipal entities, multi-county entities governing a department. So you will have absolute contact. You don't need to go through me to have those contacts. So I think that takes me through, I should say, the other thing that was added relative to the administrator's performance appraisal. A significant amount of discussion there, and they incorporated language relative to what's normally called a 360 evaluation, requiring that on at least an every other year basis, but allowing for it to take place every year. Moving then to section 2.02 of your rules, there was language clarification. You essentially had two sections of your rules, this rule 2.02 sub 3 and the duties and responsibilities of your HR, Finance, and Property Committee, which I'll show you later. They were in conflict. They were internally inconsistent. In connection with the board last term updating and, well, I should say developing its first budget modification policy, this language was provided for clarification. So again, it eliminates that internal inconsistency and is consistent with state statute. No real fundamental changes with regard to the standing committee rules and responsibilities other than some language changes and updates. There was, as I referenced before, within the HR, Finance, and Property Committee, which I'm at now on page 105, a couple of slight changes to make that not only consistent with state law, but also capture the committee's role with regard to, county policies regarding donations, grants, and budget modifications. There were a number of changes within the rules when you get to sections 2.05 and 2.06, and those relate to that substantive change that I referenced before that the Rules Review Committee discussed about appointment authority. A lot of the changes, we tried to adopt a very consistent structure in terms of how the rules were laid out. So each subordinate body now has a section that reads appointment, authority, and member term. So we had things in the same place. The committee spent a fair amount of time doing that. But it also then clarified if those appointments were made by the county board chairperson, made by the administrator. It made sure that that was consistent with state law. And then it also clarified if the law allows for the appointing authority to designate both the positions of committee chair and committee vice chair. The Rules Review Committee had a discussion as to whether or not they wanted to include that in the rules. So here, for example, we'll see on the Board of Health, the appointment authority and member term section had additional language offered. The appointments to the Board of Health by state law they're offered by the administrator subject to county board approval. And in offering those appointments, the law does allow for designation of committee chair and vice chair. So the Rules Review Committee, you'll see this language mirrored throughout. That last line on page 111. In offering appointments, the administrator shall designate the positions of committee chairperson and vice chairperson, which shall be county board supervisors. So you'll see that structure that follows throughout all the rules. I won't go through all of them because those, again, they're set forth in the rules. If you have any questions, happy to take them up and answer them. Again, from my perspective and other members, the members of the Rules Review Committee last term can take those up. As I referenced before, there is on page 140 of the packet, there is a summary document that lays out those changes with respect to appointment authority as to sections 2.04, 2.05, and 2.06. Again, there was one error. Thank you to Supervisor Lemmer for catching this. And I redlined it just to make very clear that it wasn't changed later. But the Marathon County Public Library, that is by law, county administrator appointment subject to board confirmation. However, by law, they have the ability and authority to elect their own officers. So it's not within the board's authority, the county board's authority, to have a designation. So apart from that, I think that takes me through all of the updates that Supervisor Dickinson, the Rules Review Committee Chair, all the changes that he wanted me to go through. I will say we do have, I forgot, I was going to talk about potential amendment, and that is on page, let me see here. the amendment relative to local impact, alternative energy projects, and the attempt to get input relative to local impact. There's a memo on page 131 of your packet. The reason it's in there is because the executive committee at its the last meeting of last term directed myself to work with Brian and come up with a potential rule to assist in gathering input ultimately for the board to have at its ready when assessing a potential joint development agreement, and to provide guidance to staff and potentially outside counsel to negotiate that agreement. So there's a memo, again, on page 131. That memo is 4 pages. It goes through the various options, and I'll just go through them relatively quickly. Essentially, I crafted, working with Brian, crafted 2 alternatives. The first is to create via a rule amendment, adding subsection 11, 2.05 sub 11, to provide for the framework for the creation of an alternative energy project local impact advisory committee. So that's option 1. It talks through how the membership of that body would be formed. Again, that would be formed like any other task force that this body forms during the year. That is whoever is elected as your chair brings forward appointments for consideration by the board, and ultimately confirmation is up to the board. It spells out the framework, providing for each municipality within the footprint of that proposed project to have a representative, again, designated by the board chair, subject to confirmation by the county board. Provides for an equal number of county board representatives to be appointed, as well as 1 individual with an expertise in the specific alternative energy that's at issue. The second option is essentially a project charter for the executive committee. Gathering the same information, essentially gathering it in the same time frame, both of which are short because you don't have a whole lot of time, as the board discussed at its last meeting and the executive committee discussed at its last meeting. This is a timely issue. But the fundamental difference is, rather than having a new body formed by the board, essentially a task force under option 1, this tasks the executive committee with gathering that information. It tasks the executive committee with gathering it in much the same way. That is that it holds a public input meeting, giving individuals an opportunity to speak, no more than 3 minutes per individual. It calls for a very similar, essentially identical report to be authored. The difference is it's not project specific. This is a more general approach. Again, it's the executive committee gathering all of that input. So whether it's a solar project or a wind energy project, you wouldn't necessarily have to do separate reports for each one. I offered those, I own the offering of them, but whatever route you go, staff will support that taking place. They are essentially, again, put forth for you to consider to gather the same information, to essentially inform the executive committee, to inform staff and potentially outside counsel as to what to seek in a joint development agreement, and then also to help the board, should a joint development agreement ultimately come back for your formal consideration. It should help you in considering whether or not to support that joint development agreement. So that was the amendment that I was tasked with bringing back to this body at its organizational meeting. So with that, that's all I have.
Thank you, Administrator. So before you is the adoption of Chapter 2 of the General Code of Marathon County, County Board Rules of Procedure, Ordinance Number O-14-26. So I am looking for a motion to adopt. We have a motion by Supervisor Robinson, a second by Supervisor Foote. And I am going to recognize Corp Counsel Brian Desmond to facilitate discussion.
Thank you, Clerk Trueblood. I guess at this point, if Supervisor Robinson, if you would like to speak to your motion?
Sure, I just wanted to add one other change, or a couple of changes. We eliminated the TIF task force in there, and we also eliminated the broadband task force, shifting the responsibility from that task force to the infrastructure committee, because most of the discussion going forward will be operational versus policy. The feds are basically taking over all the policy issues relative to broadband. But I would also like to thank Vice Chair Dickinson for his work on this, and there were a lot of meetings on this, and I think we tried to make the rules more streamlined and clear and reduce conflicts, and it's always a dynamic document, but I think will guide us well into this term.
And Supervisor Foote, would you like to say anything about your second?
I just thought it looks pretty good.
Thank you. Next up, we have Supervisor Krems.
Thank you. I would like to make a motion, if possible, to make a minor amendment under section, 2.01 sub 1 sub F Frank number 2. That'll be page 68 of our packets under the title of meeting attendance. Under number 2 sub D, what I would like to insert, currently it reads, the county board chair shall have the authority to permit any individual supervisor to attend a monthly business meeting by approved audio-visual means in the event that a medical circumstance precludes the supervisor from appearing in person. My motion would be to add personal obligation or work-related obligation as means to attend via virtual instead of being mandated in person. As I shared at our orientation meeting last week, my employment requires me to frequently travel outside of the state, and I spend over 100 weeknights per year away from our area. It will always be my intention to attend all Tuesday board meetings in person, and will do what I can, but I would like to have the flexibility to be in attendance virtually on the occasions when my career makes me unable to attend in person. This change would assure that my constituents in my area are not left without representation during those times. I can assure the board that I will take all necessary steps to ensure reliable internet connection. I will log in via WebEx and have full camera function and access the voting system so that my participation, remains meaningful and transparent. I appreciate my fellow board members' consideration of this amendment.
Thank you. We have a second to that motion by Supervisor Rosenberg. Do you have any comment you'd like to make with regard to your second?
Nope, I think that's a solid amendment though, so thank you for suggesting it.
Any other discussion on this amendment? Supervisor Hagan.
Yes, in reading the Rules Committee, I ran across, because I'm on the McDevico Board of Directors, on that section in section 2.06, it says the board chair appointment of members are subject to confirmation by the Board of Supervisors. And it says the chair and the vice chair are elected from the members appointed to the CWA board.
We're on the motion from Supervisor
I'm just
Krems
looking
right
at a
now.
correction, that's all.
Yeah, we'll take up his motion, and then if there's a correction, we can
Okay.
handle it then. Anybody else wish to speak to Supervisor Krem's motion? All right, we can proceed to vote. That's no fun. Supervisor Marash.
Thank you. On my open meetings, it says Elections County Board Vice Chair for what I'm voting for.
Skipping ahead.
Is that what everyone else has as well? Because ours says the vote has been called for the agenda motion to amend for amendment number 1. My apologies, just a moment. Did anything change on your end when we went back? Go here, go to the agenda editor. Have to print off roll. So we'll do a voice vote for this amendment, and then I'm going to ask everyone to log out of open meetings and log back in, and we'll see if that solves the problem, because on our end, everything is correct. So I don't know what the disconnect is, so those of you who are new, welcome to the dysfunction that sometimes is open meetings. Yes, sir.
Could you read back the exact wording of the amendment before we vote on it?
You bet. It's on the screen, or it was on the screen. Do you have the page number that's on? Would you mind reading that, because I can't see it from here?
Sure. The amendment is to section 2.01, sub 1, sub F, sub 2, sub D. It inserts the following phrase, and I'll read the phrase first and then the entire section again. It inserts the phrase personal obligation or work-related obligation into the following. The county board chair shall have the authority to permit any individual supervisor to attend a monthly business meeting by approved audiovisual means in the event that a medical circumstance, personal obligation, or work-related obligation precludes the supervisor from appearing in person. And again, that is up on the screen in the assembly room.
I would just go into the agenda in the editor and change to a voice vote. Okay, go ahead. We can do a voice vote.
Roll call or just?
Voice, just voice.
All in favor?
All in favor, yeah.
At this time, we will take a vote on the motion to amend. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Let's raise your hands if you were opposed, please, so we can mark it for the record. Thank you. Oh, no, keep them up. She's still
We
straight.
need to count. I just need to count. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, thank you.
The amendment has passed. It was not unanimous. We are back to the rules as amended.
Okay, are we back on the rules on your devices? What do you have? Waiting, okay. It just skipped everything. And I don't know why, because ours is exactly where it's supposed to be. Yes, so. This is what, I'm gonna go, should I?
While we deal with the technical difficulties, I can address Supervisor Hagan's question relative to McDevco. In your rules packet, on page, this is the red line version, the bottom of page 128, top of page 129. By my read, I don't see the McDevco Board of Directors reference to Central Wisconsin Airport. It reads, appointing authority and membership for county board supervisors shall be nominated by the county board chairperson to the McDevco Board of Directors. You may be reading, now that I'm saying this out loud, you may be reading from the summary document that was put together that. Yeah, page 141. So that was an attempt to summarize information. So again, you caught the second intentional mistake I made. But within the rules document, it clarifies that it's county board members appointed by the county board chair. Good catch.
All right, supervisors, apparently there was an update that was missed, and that's causing our computer issues here tonight. So we are going to have to go to roll call votes with our votes this evening. We can move on. The clerk is going to go print out some roll call vote sheets to use to keep track of that tally. At this point, though, are there any other amendments that anyone would like to discuss? Supervisor Zhang is.
Thank you. I just need some clarification. Under page 79, under Rule 13, 1, is at the last sentence, it says, said chairpersons and vice chairpersons shall be county board supervisors. But then I'm also looking at page 126, under the Civil Service Commission. It talks about the appointing authority, but it also says that no elected members can serve on that committee. Who appoints the chairperson to that committee?
By law, they elect the chairperson, and it's by law that elected officials cannot serve on the Civil Service Commission.
Okay, so do we wouldn't need to add that into this at all? Is that correct here?
Nope.
Thank you.
And I apologize, Supervisor Robinson, did I miss you with a motion? It says you have a motion to be made here on our screen.
Oh, that's the rules. That's the
The
original.
original. Perfect. We'll figure this out at some point, I promise. Supervisor Lemmer, you seem to be the one that's up next on the floor.
Yeah, thank you. I guess I'll call you Chair, Acting Chair.
Guy running the microphone is probably more
Okay.
accurate.
Thank you, Guy, running the phone. Listen, I have an amendment on page 138. It would be Rule 18 Sub E, which is a review of supervisor conduct. This is something that I brought forward to the executive committee, and it was recommended that I work with Corp Counsel and the administrator to batten down the hatch a little bit. And this is after how many revisions? Maybe 4. Vice Chair Dickinson also chimed in a little bit, and this is the result of it. If you want, I can go through it briefly or just take questions, but what's your recommendation with that? Motion.
Guy running the microphone. You're making the motion to adopt the proposed Rule 18E at this time, is that correct?
Yes.
Is there a second to that motion? We have a second from Supervisor Marash. Supervisor Lemmer, is there anything else you'd like to say about your motion, or should we move to the second to see if there's further commentary there?
Well, let's move on to number 2, and then I'll take any questions that people may have.
No, we just lost who was second.
That was,
Stacy, Supervisor Marash, you're up.
Thank you. I didn't second it, just to clarify. I was just up for a request to speak.
Oh, we
But
still need a second to this. Supervisor Zhang will second that. Supervisor Zhang, you have the floor. Is there anything you'd like to say about your second?
No.
Supervisor Marash, are you chiming in now to
Yes,
speak?
thank you.
All right.
So my question is, with the third-party investigator, what exactly does that mean? Who would that be, as an, like an example? And then would it be any additional cost to the county?
It doesn't. All right. A third-party investigator would be someone who is either like an outside attorney, outside counsel. There are also, I know of at least one HR firm that does these type of investigations out of Madison that I've used in the past. So yes, it would come at an additional expense to the county to further that investigation. I can tell you the thought process behind that is the fact that the administrator is the only employee of the board, so it would put him in a bad position to be investigating his bosses or his boss, one of his bosses essentially. And when it comes to corporation counsel's role, my role is as the attorney for the organization. So if there should ever be any hearings and things of that nature on one of these issues, I would be providing legal advice to the board. So, and I've been involved in one in the past in one of the other counties I worked in, and there was an outside investigator. I, again, represented the board at that point in time, provided them legal advice. So that's basically the procedure and the thought behind it.
And if I can,
Follow up, please. Sorry.
you go ahead and then I'll follow up.
So because it would be expensive, outside lawyers are expensive, probably $300 to $500 an hour is my guess. This would be approved by the executive committee or HR, or would the board have any say in how much we would be willing to pony up for this kind of investigation?
Perfect question. That was going to be my follow-up clarification. So that is referenced within subsection 3, so 18E3. Before the securing of an outside investigator, the executive committee would conduct what I'll call I think under your rules, I think it's fair to characterize it as an initial review. And should the body believe that it's appropriate to move that investigation forward, that really is the first line of subsection 4. Should the executive committee deem investigation appropriate, it would direct staff to do that. And like Brian, I've had opportunity in some of the other bodies on which I serve by designation of the board to need to have such investigations done. And you do exactly what you kind of alluded to, essentially make a determination as to whether or not it's necessary for the reasons that Corp Counsel Desmond referenced. And you set a fee ceiling.
One more, since I still have the floor. Did we determine whether or not there was any issue with innocent until proven guilty?
Sure, the one thing staff were tasked with following the meeting that Supervisor Lemmer referenced was to reach out, and we did reach out to Andy Phillips from the Wisconsin, from Atolis Law, who represents a great many counties and works with the Counties Association. He offered some amendments, which, as Supervisor Lemmer referenced, created version 4, which is the one that's before you. But essentially, no concerns on that front.
Supervisor Sandowski, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is actually just charged. This isn't, they haven't been found guilty from like what Stacy said. This is just charged, just an allegation, a charge. So they haven't been found guilty yet? Because, I mean, if you don't have all the facts and if they're not charged in the court of law, like Stacy said, they're still innocent until proven guilty. I mean, that's all I got.
Supervisor Covelli, you appear to be next with the floor.
Thank you. Could someone read the amendment a little louder? I couldn't hardly hear what that was.
The amendment is on page 138 and 139 of your packet. It is to create subsection E under Rule 18, and that, again, was offered by Supervisor Lemmer. It goes on to page 139.
Thank you.
Supervisor Robinson, you have the floor.
I just want to try to put some context into the potential costs. I've been on the board for 20 years, and we've had 2 investigations in that period of time. One with the former administrator and the second with the clerk. And I think the beauty of the independence is that it brings objectivity to the situation, and I think provides some opportunities to clarify the situation and deal with it. I'm not concerned about the cost, given the fact that we've got a gatekeeper. In the context of the executive committee, I don't think they're going to run out there in every whim or every charge and necessarily engage someone else to look at the circumstances and deal with it at that time. But I think there's the issue potentially of the integrity of the board as it relates to the concerns. And I think if you've been looking at Congress in the last couple of weeks, you can see why this potentially has some value to the county, to have a process by which we can move forward rather than everybody rushing to their own process. And this formalizes a process by which all parties can have their day.
Supervisor Lemmer, you have the floor.
Thanks, and I just want to point out that this is not meant to be for issues of somebody that doesn't like the color socks Ann Lemmer is wearing. It's a serious criminal charge that has been brought forth by authorities. So it really is meant to protect the integrity. I see us as public servants. We need to remember who we are working for. And if the example I used in the executive committee is if Ann Lemmer is going through if she's been accused and charged with embezzlement, she should immediately be removed from the Finance Committee. Yes, I'm innocent until proven guilty, but the public needs to know that I am capable of trust and doing the work on that committee. And so if I am doing something that goes against the mission of that committee, that's where the executive committee in this process could come forward to decide if there needs to be a further investigation. It allows for a process, because without the process, I'm concerned that we are adding risk. What is the risk if Ann Lemmer is being tasked with formulating a budget and has embezzled something? It just doesn't seem like that's a good plan either. So I think this process protects all of us.
Supervisor Marash?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say that I too agree that we need to have a process and appreciate the hard work that's been put into developing this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak with regards to this? Supervisor Rosenberg,
Yeah,
before I could finish.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I was waiting, and I guess I just want to also emphasize that the importance here is holding each other accountable and having standards. In a previous life, I was in a situation where we didn't have a process like this, and it was kind of chaotic when people were then coming for the leader's head. So it's important for us to talk through this, and thank you for putting in the 4 drafts and all the work on it.
Anyone else wish to speak on the proposed amendment? Anyone else wish to speak on the proposed amendment? If not, I will have the clerk call the roll.
Arstead.
Yes.
Boots. Conway. Cavelli. Coyle. DeBrew. Drabeck is he online? Drabeck?
Aye.
Thank you. Endres? Aye. Ensign?
Yes.
Foote?
Yes.
Gow?
No.
Gibbs?
Aye.
Griner?
Aye.
Hagan?
Aye.
Papa? Jensen?
Aye.
Krems?
Aye.
Kurth? Lemmer?
Aye.
Mask?
Aye.
Marash?
Aye.
Nyseth?
Aye.
Opal? Poole? Radke? Ritter? Robinson? Rosenberg?
Aye.
Shaneborn? Seafelt? Soibert? Sundelski? Straub? Wilhelm? Zhang? Thank you. We have 3 no votes, and the rest are ayes. The motion carries. Thank you.
Now, we are back to the rules as amended twice. Do we have any other proposed amendments to the rules at this time? Shall ask again, are there any other proposed amendments to the rules at this time? Supervisor Gibbs, did I see a hand go up, go down?
I'd like to offer amendment to the rules to adopt option 1 as it relates to the Alternative Energy Local Impact Advisory Council project.
If you'll hold on just a minute, we'll get that entered, and then we can get a second.
The option that Chair Gibbs has suggested is on page 134 in your packet, and that would be for a separate committee to be formed for these JDAs, just so everybody's aware of which which version we're speaking of. We need a second to that motion. Is there a second? I'll go with, I think Supervisor Poole had his hand up first in my line of vision. All right, we have time for discussion. I believe Supervisor Robinson, you're up first.
I would like to offer an amendment to delete the word landowner and replace it with resident. I don't think we want to have, I think we want to encourage everyone to comment, not just landowners, but the residents in those areas, maybe renting. I believe it's on the second page. Or wherever landowners occurs, just replace that with residents. Inclusive.
Do we have a second to, we'll go with Rosenberg here. Supervisor Rosenberg, your hand went up first in my line of vision. Is there any discussion, further discussion of the amendment as proposed by Supervisor Robinson? We all understand what the Chairperson Gibbs, or excuse me, Supervisor Gibbs.
On a clarification, are you talking about residents within the affected area and surrounding area or throughout the county? Because I think it encompasses a different part of, a different, potentially different class of people, a different makeup of people.
My intent would be to be broad. It may be that you live outside that area but have a concern. You may have relatives or someone else in that area. You may have some expertise in the issue. I think we want to try to have as broad of participation as possible in that. And you're talking about compiling those concerns and taking them to the executive committee for the development of the joint development agreement. So I think it's good to be inclusive.
So the amendment before the board is to replace the term landowners with resident in the amendment to 2.05 sub 11 that was proposed. There we understand that we're only voting to change that one term at this time. Is there any other comment on the change that has been proposed? I'll ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Boots. Conway. Cavelli. Coyle. DeBrew. Drabeck. Supervisor Drabeck, are you hearing us?
Aye.
Thank you. Endres.
Aye.
Ensign. Foote. Gow. Gibbs. Griner. Hagan. Hoppe. Jensen. Krems. Kurth. Lemmer.
Aye.
Mask. Marash. Nyseth. Opal. He must be in the airplane now. Poole. Radke. Ritter. Robinson.
Aye.
Rosenberg.
Aye.
Shaneborn. Seafelt. Soibert. Sandelsky. Straub. Watson is excused for now. Wilhelm. Zhang. Thank you. Motion carries and is not unanimous.
You didn't say my name.
I have to go back to the beginning. I forgot to do that. I'm so sorry, Arsted. Thank you. I'm not out of practice doing this.
I did say the old.
Thank you.
Definitely swore in public.
All right, we are back to the amendment that was proposed by Supervisor Gibbs with now the amendment that was just passed from Supervisor Robinson. Is there any discussion on the motion as amended? Supervisor Lemmer, you have the floor.
Thank you. I actually want to just talk about a couple of things with this because it talks about alternative energy projects. And I wonder why we are limiting this to whatever alternative energy is. A couple years ago, we had a situation where we were considering a JDA with a digester. And we really could do this as a process for any time we have a JDA, yes? And if not, if we, wouldn't, eventually we might have data centers. I know they're not energy producers, but they're definitely energy users. And then I wonder, the rules or the comp plan that we just approved seems like it opened the door to having nuclear, new coal, and clean coal. Are we limiting this group to just wind and solar? Or are we talking about any time there's a JDA? Because I think if there is a JDA for other things, it seems to me this process should encompass that as well. The other thing that I'm wondering is it talks about 60 days. The report will be in 60 days. And I wonder if that's enough time to give public comment, to get all the experts together. So 60 days seems a little bit quick for me. And then just the last thing that I'll say, and I don't know again if I need to make amendments on this, but the report that is on page 36 has a couple of subpoints, but it really seems like this is a one side of the equation. And what would be missing, in my opinion, would be a fiscal impact to doing this or not, as well as, is there a plan B? We need energy, and I don't know what the next step would be should this stop. Is there a backup plan? Anyway, I feel like we should also add an environmental review to this as well. So those are 3 comments. I don't know if I should back them up and take them one at a time, if I should offer amendments, or if it's just a point of conversation because I'm missing something.
I believe Administrator Leonard has some information.
Yeah, very good. Very good questions. I think working through them, and of course, the board is ultimately responsible for how you want to organize yourself and what the task you want to be. So I'll try to go in order, and please keep me honest if I miss something. With regard to the limiting the scope of this to a specific type of energy, I intentionally put, I did not specify wind and solar. I used alternative energy system, wind, solar, etc. So I did have a Supervisor Krems reached out and, well, would this allow for if there was a hydroelectric project? Absolutely. With regard to your broader question about would this specific ordinance allow for a JDA with a digester or other project with a JDA? The framework certainly would work. The reason I was tasked to bring back a framework for your conversation at your organizational meeting because you have a very specific challenge in front of you as a board. That is, building into your second question, very time limited, particularly your Hub City Wind project. When you asked about is 60 days enough, I'm not sure, but I don't know that you have a lot more than 60 days based on what needs to happen. If you want to get local impacts, I tried to craft something, and full ownership, I made this up. I put together kind of how I think it should work, bounced some ideas off of Brian and Lori Miskimmons and others. And I think it's a good system. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. You'd like to have the metallic mining approach, which is, this is largely modeled off, is much longer in terms of time frame because you have more time. As it relates to the potential for a joint development agreement, at least as it relates to the Hub City Wind project, I'm not sure that you have that time. Your last question, relative to the report and it not having fiscal impact, you're absolutely right. The purpose, again, as I understood the task from the executive committee, was to get local impacts for informing a JDA. You're absolutely right. I think fiscal is a conversation. The fiscal impact, potential benefit is a conversation for ultimately the board to weigh. Not so much, I didn't craft that in here because that's a thing that the executive committee and ultimately the full board is gonna request, I'm sure, additional information other than this. Not really important for this advisory committee to try to calculate what the fiscal impact is. Staff can do that. We're in a much better position to bring that information on as to the fiscal impact. All very good questions. That I hope informs what my thought process was and how to frame it. But of course, if you want to do it differently, the world is your oyster as a county board, and you want to craft it to take more time, we certainly can do that. The downside is, as the executive committee in their conversation kind of alluded to, and as Attorney Phillips and Attorney Roker referenced during their presentation to the full board last term, once that CPCN is granted by the Public Service Commission, a lot of the leverage appears from their expertise to go away. So it is very time limited to try to get all of that. For projects that come up later, you certainly could provide for more time. But particularly in light of that circumstance, that's why I called for a shorter time. Hope that helps.
And then just to clarify, is the point of the report just to get the negatives, the people who are against it, and not get a balanced report to make a decision that's informed?
I wouldn't characterize it as negatives. I would characterize it as local concerns that can be addressed potentially through a joint development agreement. So I tried to look online and find joint development agreements. I did a bit of research about what are the concerns and certainly listened again to the meetings of the residents that have come to your meetings and talked about what their concerns are. Again, I think the purpose of this body is different than the purpose of the ultimate discussion about whether or not you want to enter into a joint development agreement. That does encapsulate all of those other things you referenced, the national need for energy, the state need for energy. Not so much the value of that local impact, local voice. Thank you.
Supervisor Marash.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm just curious why, if it's possible to ask Supervisor Gibbs, just because I want more clarification, why you're more in favor of option 1 over option 2? Just because you have to create a separate advisory committee for each project, and I'm wondering, I'm just asking for information, not that I have an opinion, but I just am really curious why you think that would be better. Thank you.
Supervisor Gibbs, I will give you the floor for a response.
Thank you, Acting Chair. The thing that I see is you have potentially different types of development. You have right now, currently, there's discussions about a solar project in the eastern side of the county. There's 2 potential wind projects in the western part of the county, but impacting different townships and different municipalities. So specifically wanting to engage those municipalities and potentially having different concerns over different projects may result in different dynamics in the negotiations and concerns that those citizens have as far as a JDA, if the board is so inclined to engage in those talks.
Follow-up, please. Just to clarify then, so, because when I read these, it was my understanding that option 2 would do all those same things, but the whole process would be more streamlined going through the executive committee instead of and we'd still contact everybody and give everybody their input. But from just this is when I read it, I thought it would be more efficient time-wise to go through the executive committee instead of going through, having each separate project, on their own. But, so that's why I was curious, and I'm still not sure if I'm understanding correctly that they are generally the same, but it's just having either separate committees, getting all the input, and having the executive committee run it and still getting all the input. Am I understanding correctly?
Yeah, again, full ownership, I made that up too. I tried to do them, like you said, I think that's the primary difference is, you're trying to balance the detailed information that is project-specific that Supervisor Gibbs referenced to try to get at, we're gonna give the residents of these 5 impacted municipalities the full floor to offer their perspective in a forum with a body versus having an open invite, which is largely what you've had at the full board in your previous meetings. You haven't restricted the public comment, as Supervisor Gibbs referenced. You've had people offer public comment on the solar project. You'd have people offer public comment on each of the 2 proposed wind projects. Technically, I went back and watched the executive committee meeting again. Really, the direction was more consistent with option 1, but I was like, I'll give you 2 to choose from that I think can do it. I do think, as Supervisor Gibbs referenced, you may lose a little bit. A solar project is fundamentally different than a wind project in terms of what residents may be concerned with. Not wholly different, but setbacks relative to a large wind project. A 600-plus foot wind turbine is a different change to the landscape than a couple hundred acres of solar panels. I'm not saying any one is better or worse than the other, but they may be different. So I tried to balance, do you do it once with the executive committee and get all that information to author that report? Or do you give more voice to the individual constituents as projects come up? For example, if you went the option 2 route, you got this information, you might be well served if 2 years from now or even a year from now, another project comes in to redo the project because maybe perspectives have changed. But again, in full candor, I drafted it. Your executive committee it only met like 2 weeks ago. So it hasn't been too much thought put into it.
Excuse me. Supervisor Soibert?
Thank you. My question is on the JDAs. If we don't know what projects are getting built, and we don't because there's 2 solar projects being built, have started to be built in the western part of the county, a 40-acre parcel and a 30-plus acre parcel, and they've started construction. And nobody in the county or in the townships or the villages close to this know about it. So how would we make them wait 30 days or 60 days? We don't have that authority. We don't have the authority to get a JDA out of those guys because they just come in and start building. That's just my thought. I mean, windmills, we have no idea where they're gonna be. We have an idea, there's 5 counties, but nobody knows where they're gonna be. If they're gonna be next to cities, if they're gonna be next to. So how do we get around that so that we know what's going on?
Sure, great questions. I'm not sure I'm entirely qualified to answer. I will say with respect to your comment about the project's size is referenced in here, that this is for those projects that would be regulated subject to PSC regulation, so 100 megawatts or larger. for the reason you just referenced. If they're smaller, they would be subject to, provided it's in a county-zoned town, they would be subject to county zoning, which allows for a similar opportunity for public feedback through the zoning process. But as it relates to those larger projects that would be subject to PSC regulation, this provides the framework to gather that information. Based on the research that I did, and again, as Brian and I both shared it the last time, I've never negotiated a JDA before. That said, based on the comments from Attorney Roker and Attorney Phillips, as well as some of the initial research I've done, the JDA process, that negotiation process, allows for the conversation that you alluded to. That is, you get additional information about the project, specific siting of where, I'll say for a turbine, where the turbine is set to be placed, what the setback is. Of course, they have to comply with state law, but that JDA process, the negotiation process, may allow you to negotiate, for example, a larger setback. So my sense, albeit an uninformed one, is that I think through the discussion with the developer, through a JDA discussion and negotiation, you would learn some of that information you alluded to. And I should say that certainly also would have to be in their application to the PSC, based on what Attorney Roker and Attorney Phillips indicated. That PSC application process is very detailed. There's a lot of documentation that goes in there, including the siting, that is the location of the various pieces of infrastructure.
Supervisor Sandelsky, you have the floor.
Thank you. I just had, in relation to what Supervisor Lemmer was saying with the time frame, it seems like we don't have enough knowledge about the JDAs, and also to get more information like what Supervisor Soibert was saying. I'd like to make a motion to expand that time frame to 120 days instead of 60 days.
We have a motion to amend on the floor to change the 60-day reporting period to 120 days. Is there a second to that motion? I will ask again, is there a second to that motion? Motion will fail due to a lack of a second. Again, we are now back on Chair Gibbs' original motion with the amendment by, I believe it was Supervisor Robinson. Is there any other discussion on the motion as amended? Any other discussion? Supervisor Poole, you were hidden behind the. Thank you. Supervisor Wilhelm?
If we could appoint a committee, are we gonna have enough time for 60 days? Is that gonna be enough time with a committee appointed? Or or would the executive committee be a better option?
Great question. How I would envision the process working based on the direction from your executive committee, if option one, if the motion on the floor as amended were to pass, you then move forward in this meeting to elect a chairperson and vice chairperson. You come back on the 28th, and in that interim, between today and the 28th, the chair and vice chair get together and make appointments for all of your standing committees, and they meet with me, and we make appointments for all of the other subordinate bodies. They would similarly make appointments for this body, which you would then consider on the 28th. So in terms of timing, I think the hope would be that that body would be formed relatively quickly and could get its work started.
Supervisor Conway, you have the floor.
Thank you, sir. I've served on a task force or two, and I would recommend this approach versus exec committee, nothing against them, but if you're having a bunch of projects in one part of the county, we don't quite know who the exec committee is going to be at this point, so it could be everyone from a different part of the county. It could be everyone on the exec committee is from Wausau or from the eastern side or who knows where. So being able to appoint a task force for it, I think would make a lot more sense.
Thank you. Any other supervisor wish to discuss the proposed amendment to the rules? One last time, any other supervisor wish to speak to the proposed amendment to the rules? If not, I will have the clerk call the roll.
Conway. Cavelli. Coyle. DeBrew. Drabeck.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Thanks. Endres. Ensign. Foot. Gow. Gibbs. Griner. Hagan. Hoppe. Jensen. Krems. Kurth. Lemmer. Mask. Marash. Nyseth. Poole. Radke. Ritter. Robinson. Rosenberg. Shaneborn. Seafelt. Soibert. Sandelsky. Straub. Wilhelm. Zhang. Arsted. Boots. And the motion carries and is unanimous. Thank you.
All right, we are back to the rules as presented and amended now 3 times. Is there any other discussion or amendments anyone would like to make to the rules as they are now put together? All right, I will call one last time. Does anybody wish to discuss the rules as amended 3 times or make any further motions related to those rules? All right. If she's ready at this time, I'll have the clerk call the roll on the rules as amended 3 times.
Cavelli. Coyle. DeBrew. Drabeck.
Aye. Supervisor Drabeck, aye.
Thank you. Endres. Ensign. Foot. Gow. Gibbs. Griner. Hagan. Hoppe. Jensen. Krems. Kurth. Lemmer. Mask. Morash. Nyseth. Poole. Radke. Ritter. Robinson. Rosenberg. Shaneborn. Seafelt. Soibert. Sandelsky. Straub. Wilhelm. Zhang. Arsted. Boots. Conway. Thank you. The motion is carried and is unanimous.
Thank you and congratulations. You now have your rules set up for the next 2-year term of your roles as supervisors. Madam Clerk, what's next upon the agenda?
The next thing on the agenda is the election of a county board chair. So at this time, I will open the floor for nominations for the position of county board chair. And open meetings now for us has totally locked up, so. Okay. Go figure. We'll have to have a show of hands if you would like to make a nomination. Supervisor Marash.
This is for chair.
This is for chair, yes.
I'd like to nominate Kirk Gibbs.
Thank you. We have a nomination for Chair Gibbs, or for Supervisor Gibbs, I apologize. Is there any other nominations do not need seconds per Robert's rules? Is there any other nomination for the position of County Board Chair? I'll ask again, is there any other nomination for the position of County Board Chair? And a final time is Supervisor Mask.
You want to do your final time? I have a motion to make.
Okay, final time. Any other nomination for the position of County Board Chair? Seeing none. Supervisor Mask.
I'd make a motion to close the nominations and cast a unanimous vote for Supervisor Gibbs to be our next chair.
Do we have a second to that motion? Second by Supervisor Hagan was the first hand that I saw there. Do we do voice vote for that? Or do we need to do roll call? Okay, without objection, we will do a voice vote. All in favor of appointing and electing Supervisor Gibbs to the position of County Board Chair signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed signify by saying no.
Aye.
I think that was delayed.
Thanks, Al. We got you as an aye. The motion is carried and is unanimous. The next thing on the agenda is the election of a vice chair.
Does he get to come over and run it?
Absolutely.
Congratulations, Chair Gibbs. I will gladly hand over the microphone. Pipe down. Yeah.
You got the Constitution.
I have some wintergreens in my,
This was my 10th organizational meeting in my career, so I do have a little bit of experience. So I think that helped a lot.
First off, I want to thank the clerk and thank Brian for running the meeting. But I also want to express my thank you to the members of the board. I'm truly honored by the trust you placed in me through the election of chairman. Your confidence means a great deal. I am committed to serving this board and our community with integrity, transparency, and collaboration. I want to welcome each of you returning supervisors and newly elected supervisors and members, and thank you for your willingness to serve the citizens of Marathon County. The work we do matters deeply to the people of Marathon County. I'm grateful to partner with all of you as we take on the challenges and opportunities ahead. We don't walk in here wearing blue or red stripes. As elected officials, we bring our own perspectives and experiences to this board. But the responsibility of leadership is to listen, to learn, and to be willing to grow. That includes engaging with viewpoints that may differ from your own and working together in a way that reflects the values of public service. I have often said a pothole in need of fixing, a child in need of protective services does not have an R or D next to them. Thank you. I am confident we will continue to build stronger, more vibrant future for the residents we serve. Thank you again for your trust, and I look forward to working with each and every one of you during this term. Thank you. We will now proceed on to item C10, and that is the election of the board vice chair. And I would open up the nominations for vice chair. Supervisor Cavelli, please.
Thank you, Chair Gibbs, and congratulations. I nominate Supervisor Boots for the position of vice chair.
Okay, we have Supervisor Boots for vice chair. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Okay, we have a nomination for Supervisor Ritter for vice chair. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Calling a third time, any other nominations? I will declare the nominations are closed, and we will proceed with a secret ballot. Per statute, we will have a secret ballot. Each elected official, supervisor will be provided one ballot. Please place on that ballot either Supervisor Boots or Supervisor Ritter's name. And we will also we also have 4 supervisors that are participating virtually, and so we will solicit their ballots as well. The Corp Council will solicit their ballots. I apologize to the board. We normally allow for a speech by each of the candidates before we do the ballot. And so I'm going to ask that these ballots be destroyed. And I'd like to have the opportunity for each of the candidates to address the board. And so Supervisor Ritter, if you would like to address the board.
Thank you, Chair Gibbs, and congratulations on Chair once again.
Thank you.
I think we went into closed session for a minute.
I do think it's important that the board hear from each of the 2 candidates on their perspective of the job. Okay, as soon as the clerk comes back, we'll proceed then.
We're still in the city council meeting, so they can't listen.
Okay.
So go ahead and speak.
All right, we will now turn the mic over to Supervisor Ritter first, please. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you again, Chair Gibbs. Most of you I've worked with the past term, or this is my 3rd term coming in. My last term, I was vice chair of ERC. Midway through, the chair resigned, and I was thankfully voted as chair, and I've kind of proven to everybody that I am able to handle new challenges as they are presented to me. And I would look at being vice chair as another new challenge. Supervisor Boots and I kind of joke about this because he's very well qualified to be vice chair. So I guess be a popularity contest, I think. So that's it. The mic is yours.
Okay, Supervisor Boots, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. I thank you, Ron, for nominating me. Truly appreciate your support. A little bit about myself. I live with my wife, Tammy, about a mile up the road from Trap River Golf Course. Between us, we have 7 children, with 2 still at home, so we're adjusting to a quieter house these days. When we're not spending time with family, Tammy and I are enjoying golfing and traveling. We also spend a lot of time running a 501c3 charity for Page Boots Foundation, which is funded by an annual golf outing, Trap River Golf Course. Outside of that, I spend a lot of time in the woods and hunting and fishing with our kids. To begin, I'd like to provide a bit of background on my experience. I served as my township board chair for 10 years. I'm currently serving my 7th term in the county board for District 12, which covers Township of Texas and Wausau. During this time, I have chaired the Health and Human Services Committee for 3 terms, the Public Safety Committee for 2 terms. In addition, I have served 4 terms as Marathon County's delegate to the National Counties Association. I currently represent Wisconsin on the Agricultural Standing Committee at the National Association of Counties. If elected as chair, I have 3 primary goals over the next 2 years. First, I would lead the development of the county strategic plan. I would do this by engaging community stakeholders to gather input on the current comprehensive plan, work with the administrator and department heads to identify staff perspectives on priorities, and by holding a retreat for all of us, the county board, the policy setting body for this county, to align priorities and presenting a finalized strategic plan for board approval by December 1st, 2026. But my commitment regarding the strategic plan will not end with its adoption. Instead, my commitment is to work with each of the standing committees to ensure we move the priorities forward. I would do so by attending each standing committee meeting at least once per quarter and offering assistance in setting your agendas and leading conversations on moving the objectives forward. Second, I would serve as the chair of the Rules Review Committee. In addition to fulfilling the standard responsibilities, I believe it is important we conduct a follow-up review on April 2027 to evaluate progress and make any necessary adjustments to the rules. Finally, I would work collaboratively with the entire county board to ensure that the process we just adopted relative to addressing solar, wind, data center, and battery storage projects works for this body and our residents. It needs to be clear, transparent, and effective. As your vice chair, I'd commit to ensuring that we evaluate our process and get it right in the rules process. In closing, I believe my experience, my commitment to this county, and my collaborative approach make me well prepared to serve in this role. I'd be honored to serve as your vice chair. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And again, I apologize to the board for the order. And we'll now present secret ballots to each supervisor and have those ballots filled out. Prior ballot. Oh, blank.
Yep, that's why.
All right, we have the results. Your new vice chair will be Supervisor Boots.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Uh-oh.
I will have, yeah.
Thank you to the board. Very humble. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I won't let you down. How's that? And I get to sit by Mr. Leonard. This is gonna be great.
We're back, discussion managers back up, at least for discussion.
We'd like to try to re-engage discussion manager and open meetings. So if you would all try to log back in to facilitate the remainder of the meeting. And looks like we have everybody. So we'll move on to item D, educational presentations. And so Board Education on the process of submitting the committee assignment requests. I will turn it over to the administrator. He will tell you, we are going to be sending out an email to each of you soliciting your areas of interest on committees, subcommittees, also whether or not you would like to have a mentor appointed as a new supervisor, and if you, as a returning supervisor, are willing to serve as a mentor to the new supervisors. Administrator Letter, please.
That's the survey. It'll come out either tonight or tomorrow morning. If you could do it as promptly as possible, that would be great. Because we'll be meeting later this week to do that. So I will endeavor to have it out, barring some technical challenges, at the end of today's meeting with the change that you made. If I don't, it will be out early tomorrow morning.
And I would like to try to, because there is a fair amount of work involved in new committee assignments and all the interplay between subcommittees and the various committees, and the chair and the vice chair and the administrator will start to work on that as promptly as possible. So if you would pay attention to that when that email comes out, and fill out that survey and your request for committee assignments, and move that back as quickly as possible, hopefully by tomorrow evening, no later, so that we have it, so that Thursday or Friday or Saturday, the chair, the vice chair, and the administrator and I can work on those appointments for your consideration at next Tuesday's meeting. Okay. Any questions on Supervisor Shaneborn? All right. Moving on to the education discussion regarding items that will be voted on the Tuesday, April 28th, 2026 meeting. Under item E is ordinances. We have item E, 13A, the Town of Spencer rezone. Any questions by board members on the rezone from Tim Vreeland, 4, Connie and Daniel Johnson, ordinance 0-15-26. Any questions? This is the opportunity for supervisors, if they have any questions in regards to the items that will be voted on during the next Tuesday's meeting, or next Tuesday's meeting, they can bring them up. If we have those answers to those questions, or staff needs to get those answers, we will get those back to those supervisors. Any questions on that rezone? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to E, 14, resolutions from the Executive Committee proclaiming National Police Week for 2026, Resolution 23-26. Any discussion on that resolution? All right. Moving on to item E, 14B from Health and Human Services Committee and from Human Resources, Finance and Property Committee. Item E, 14B1, a resolution approving the out-of-home placement reserve increase, Resolution 24-26. Any questions? All right, we will proceed on to item E, 14B2, a resolution to amend the Social Services 2026 budget, Resolution R-25-26. Any questions? Supervisor Robinson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to take an opportunity for the new members to explain what we're doing here. This is we received notice that the state was releasing American Rescue Plan dollars, or ARPA dollars. Those were federal dollars that arose out of the pandemic, and money was given to the state. Marathon County received $25 million, but the money had to be encumbered or earmarked by December 31st of 2024 and spent by December 31st of 2026. We've been monitoring the dollars in the county. The state was looking at their dollars and determined that there was excess dollars, and they're giving additional funding to the states for family children benefits. And because it's coming in, we need to amend our budget to reflect the receipt of the dollars from the federal government.
Any other discussion? Any other questions? Okay. Next is any announcements and/or requests, and the clerk has several announcements. But we first have Supervisor Radke, please.
Thank you. On April 28th, the Marathon County Workers Memorial Day observance. It's Tuesday, April 28th at 5 p.m. at the Workers Memorial Site on River Drive. Every year, unions, workers, and central labor councils throughout the nation acknowledge those workers who have died on the work site. Please join the North Central Wisconsin Central Labor Council, AFL-CIO, to observe those who have died in Marathon County. Local legislators, unions, and family members have been invited to speak. General public is invited to attend. This is an outside event, so dress accordingly.
Thank you. We have Supervisor Krebs next, please.
Thank you, Chairman Gibbs. I would like to take a moment to recognize the recent promotions of Marathon County Sheriff's Department employees Tyler Bremer to lieutenant and Andy Soibert to captain. Lieutenant Bremer and Captain Soibert have a combined 25 years of service at the Sheriff's Department. I can personally attest that Lieutenant Bremer and Captain Soibert are excellent additions to the agency, and both of them demonstrate the utmost professionalism as law enforcement officers. Congratulations to both of them, and thank you to both of them for continuing to serve and protect our great county.
Okay, next we have Supervisor Chong, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say a big thank you to the folks who helped sponsor the 50th anniversary of the Hmong celebration that happened on April 4th. We had well over 400 people in attendance for the banquet and over 1,000 people that went through the exhibit as well too. So to all those that came, it meant a lot as well too to members of the Hmong community. And there's no words in Hmong or English I can use to describe my gratitude. Thank you.
I also want to express my sincere thank you to two in particular in this recent disaster that we had with the tornadoes that affected the residents in this county. I would like to express my sincere thank you to administration, to emergency management, and to the sheriff's departments. They worked tirelessly in providing support to the residents out there affected by those disasters. So I can tell you, I toured the destruction area on Saturday. with the governor. I had not seen any kind of destruction like that previous. National Weather Service indicated that that tornado was over 800 yards wide and was on the ground for over 8 miles, and it affected over 80-plus homes. So a huge shout out, and the Sheriff's Department and the Fire Department and all the emergency responders had cleared multiple times all of the homes to ensure that there was no injuries, people needing assistance within the first hour and a half of that disaster. So it was great to see the community turn out. Supervisor Gao, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You kind of repeated everything I was talking about. This is my district got hit real hard. And it was, I've seen other situations, my early year of my career, several tornadoes. This one has been very massive and a lot of damage. It's heartbreaking to be out there and see the damage that our neighbors had. I also want to inform that there is a lot of areas of donations and contributions. They're out there, and I hope that anybody who can would do it and appreciate it very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Administrator Leonard, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not to say all the comments that were offered again, I just wanted to give a big shout out to staff, all the departments that Chair Gibbs referenced, but also there were all hands on deck, conservation, planning and zoning, assisted with a lot of mapping that is still being used today. Parks, Recreation, and Forestry and Highway on the night that this happened had staged well over a dozen individuals and a bunch of equipment ready to go out if they were needed. Ultimately, the municipalities didn't request that additional assistance, and then last, solid waste, which is what I want to talk about briefly. Our solid waste department, after a lot of consultation, has been working closely with the impacted areas to allow for expanded hours of drop-off, particularly on last Saturday we opened especially to allow that, but also implementing processes to make sure that that drop-off is very efficient. There is a request that we'd like to have as staff, and that is to get some guidance from the Solid Waste Management Board and then bring it to this board at your next meeting, because this is a timely issue, about what, if any, additional changes in terms of fees and other things you might be supportive of to support the residents as they continue to deal with the response to that severe weather. So with that, those of you that are on the Solid Waste Management Board, your term actually goes through April 30th. Solid Waste Management Board Director Dave Hagenbusher will be reaching out to you to schedule a special meeting yet this week or next week, Monday, to get some guidance and bring a proposal back for consideration by this board at your meeting next week. And thank you for all the support as a board. Staff really appreciate it and all the kind words. Thank you.
Supervisor Rosenberg, please. Okay. All right, Clerk Trueblood, please.
I have several things, just some housekeeping. First of all, we will work with IT tomorrow to make sure that Open Meetings works properly for next Tuesday's meeting, and I sincerely apologize for all of the technical delays tonight. If you have not yet responded to me about the COWS, the county officers workshops, and your desire to attend those, if you could do that yet in the next couple of days so I can get you registered, I would greatly appreciate that. If you have not yet returned your statement of economic interest forms to me, if you did not attend orientation, that should have been on the packet that was at your chair tonight, so I do need that back quickly. Next Tuesday, we will do a group photo at 5:45. So we'll meet out here on the east steps. We'll have to have security let us out the door so we don't set the alarms off, but we'll meet out here at 5:45 for a group photo. So please make every effort to be here by then. If you would like to have a bound copy of this last year's proceedings book, it's all the minutes from the county board meetings, and then you can request some committee meetings to be added to that if you would like. Please see me after the meeting and I'll get your name written down and what you would like to have. We're glad to provide that to you. And if you are a new supervisor and I did not get your I-9 documents before the meeting, I need to get those before you leave tonight. So if you could see me, I think I've got everybody but maybe 2 people. So please make sure I get those before you go home tonight, and I thank you for your help with that.
Any other announcements? Okay, we are down to the infamous one, and we're going to use roll call in open meetings to accept the motion to adjourn. Motion is made by Supervisor Cavelli and seconded by Supervisor Krebs. Any discussion? All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye. Opposed?
Aye.
We stand, motion is carried, we stand adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and have a great evening.
It's actually not.